Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Scott Cleverton.
And I am Assumpta Serna.
Today is the 1st of February.
Yes.
The year of our Lord, 2024. And we have a very, very special guest this evening. It's very tricky because I've spent all day speaking Spanish. And as you said, I'm absolutely sick to the back teeth of my own voice.
That's because we had a lot of classes today, because you know that we are preparing also a workshop that we are going to start doing it next week. So we have to prepare texts and talk to people and make sure that the organization is okay. So that's
tonight we're very happy to have somebody we had the pleasure of meeting. God, how long ago was it now? I don't know, 8 years ago? Quite a while. Quite a while ago now.
Yes.
And we became firm friends back in the day, and he's an extraordinary individual, a fantastic actor, and a brilliant person, Assumpta.
Is Michael Fitzgerald. Up on Instagram, right?
And here we are. Thank you. Thanks for coming, Michael. I always love those parts of shows where everybody pretends like, oh, you're here. What a surprise. It's like those documentaries when they have the shot inside the door and outside the door when they knock on it. So,
Michael, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
How did you end up in Borgia? How did that come down for you? Because for us, it was quite torturous. How did you end up in it?
I ended up in Borgia because, well, I went through various sizes as an actor. I'm a character actor, and I had become very, very fat, and I thought, well, I'm probably about to die or something, and all of that. And I suddenly thought, I said to my agent, well, this thing called Borgia, surely I'm a shoo-in for a cardinal. Well, I met Debbie McWilliams, and I was a cardinal. I got a job, and I had never done anything like that before. I had never been in a television series. I'd been in one-off plays, and I was scared to death because I normally can't watch anything that is any longer than 3 hours with, an end. So to have to do something where somebody different writes it every week, it was quite a learning curve for me.
What was the thing that you learned more than anything else? Because we all go in with a certain degree of fear. What was it you kind of overcame and went, oh, well, now I get it?
Well, I suppose when I have acted before, I try to give a sort of sense of the human being's entire life, and there's something that I would always want an audience to get about that life. But you can't do that with a series because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know whether you're even going to be alive next week. And you learn that, like in real life, that you don't know anything. You are the person you are, but you don't know which way your life is going to go, really. In a play, you do know because you rehearsed the whole thing. In a series like that, you don't know what they're going to write. So you have to, yeah?
Do you, sorry.
No, do you remember your first experience? Because I mean, I pulled up your CV, which in Theatricalia, which is extensive, deep, wide, and lengthy. Do you remember your first experiences working on camera? Because coming from the theatre, that could be pretty scary.
I always loved films, and in particular, I was in love with Ingmar Bergman's movies. And so I had watched a lot. I had thought that the acting, you never see a bad performance in a Bergman movie, never. And I kind of did, I can't remember I did one thing, like when I was in the theatre at the Young Vic, I did one thing for schools, and that was just a little comic role one day. And then I knew Martin Campbell, and he put me in a small role in Edge of Darkness with Bob Peck and Joe Don Baker. And all of those people were incredibly helpful to me. And then I suppose after I'd finished, I was lucky enough to do the most wonderful trilogy, but it wasn't a trilogy to begin with. It was called, to begin with, Interrogation of John. And the first play was so successful that the BBC asked Malcolm Mackay, the writer, to write 2 more parts, because it was like a combination of the murderer Dennis Nielsen and Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper. It wasn't either one of them. It was a completely, fictional piece, but it was like documentary. And so 2 years later, I made the next 2 things. The role was about the greatest role an actor could ever get. I was one of those people, I always wanted to play a Hamlet. And I never got a Hamlet, but this role was kind of that in a very different, very modern, very sad way. Let's put it this way, it would make a terrible musical, okay? But it was not like acting. It was like there was so much to learn, so much to think about, so much to create. It was like going to school. It was fascinating. You went in every day and learned something. You read something, or you thought about something. And there were spectacularly good actors around me. People like Simon Cadell and Richard Griffiths and Madhur Jaffrey and Billy Patterson and Dennis Quilley, and over the 2 years. And it was simply about the luckiest job you could ever get.
Do you remember how you got it? What was the process of getting that job? Because the Interrogation of John goes down in the annals of British television history as one of them, is a real high point. There's certain high points. Anything that Dennis Potter did, etc.
The casting director, one of my favorite people ever, is Sharon Howard Field, and she brought me in for a part of a kind of detective assistant to Dennis Quilley's detective. And I had never done a northern accent as an actor before. I'd done other things, but not that. And I had to go away and learn about it. The next day, after I went in and I read for it, I suppose I was all right. Eventually, the actor Jimmy Yule played the part that I went up for, fantastically. But Nicholas Renton, the director, rang me up the next morning, and I think it's largely due to him. And he said, "It occurs to me that you are a potential murderer." That's what he said to me. And he gave me a week to go and try to learn to do a kind of Birmingham accent. It was really black country, but it was as much. And so I gathered all of my friends that were from Birmingham that could speak, and I got the text together, and I went in and I read, and I got it. And there really wasn't much time to create it. We had about a week before we filmed it, and I had to go in and I had to have my hair dyed blonde. It was part of the plot. But it was also, thereafter, any job I went up for, everybody looked incredibly disappointed that I wasn't blonde. But yeah, but I was only blonde in the first part, and then he was imprisoned, and then, oh, damn, I've given the plot away now. And I had my own hair. But it was, it was one of those brilliant roles, just probably the best role I've ever played in some ways. Yeah, so that's how I got it. I got it by luck, really. I got it because Nicholas Renton thought of it.
It's very interesting because very often the actor, we work with actors, we coach actors, and all the rest of it, and a lot of the time the actor's going to go in for a job, and they'll go, I don't know how I could, me doing this, I don't really see it. And the answer is always just go and do the job that you're asked to do in the casting, and you never know who's going to notice you for something else, because
Never.
You never know.
It's such an organic thing. The thing I was looking at this extraordinary list of credits. How did one end up in the Royal Shakespeare Company back in the day? How did that work?
Well, that was the one thing I really wanted to do with my life. I was a fan from childhood, and it was really, I didn't think I would ever get in there. Mm-hmm. And I think I auditioned in 1977, and I didn't get in, because the whole Henry V company came back, so they didn't need to fill any extra roles. And then about 1979 or the beginning of 1980, I auditioned again, and I got in to play as cast. So I was in 4 Things the first season. And then at the end of the first season that I went there, an Australian actor-writer called Billy Brown had written a pantomime specially for the Royal Shakespeare Company, which kind of was a pastiche of everything that everybody played in the entire season, but it did have its own story. And I was cast as baby William Shakespeare with very baggy tights, with ink all over them because I'd wiped my hands off. My hands were always inky. And I was bald, and I had a beard. And I think the second year that I came to do it, it was a child. He knew what he was going to look like as Shakespeare. So he had this hair, this bald head and beard. They said it was a little bit frightening and that maybe I should have hair. So I had hair. I can't remember whether I had a beard the second time round. I might have done. I still had inky hands and all of that. And because it was a pantomime, I played what was equivalent to what is known as the idle jack. And everything in pantomime is in a rhyming couplet. But they decided that because I was Shakespeare, I would speak in iambic pentameter, which is what Shakespeare wrote in. And therefore, nobody else on stage ever understood a word that I said. That was the joke. It was absolutely great fun to do. That production went on. It played Stratford. The next year it played a short Christmas season at the Aldwych Theatre. And then in, I think it was March, it was the show that was chosen to open the new Barbican Theatre in front of the Queen. And that day, just the day before, but I only got it on the day, a speech was written for me to say to the Queen to welcome her, because she had to open the whole Barbican, and she had to open the art gallery and the concert hall and walk around and do all of that. And she arrived at us at the beginning of our Act 2, at which point I said to her, "Welcome, Your Majesty and gentles all." Here is where I should recall. But there is nothing of note to relate. 'Twould not amuse those who have come in late. And it sort of went, it was sort of panegyric, and it was wonderful. And I then worked with Helen Mirren. I then went back to Stratford, and Helen Mirren came up to Stratford to play Cleopatra for Adrian Noble. And she was incredibly sweet to me. And she said, you were so professional. I was there the opening night in front of the whole Royal Shakespeare Company and all of that. And she said, you were so professional. And I said, how so? She said, because from the waist up, you were perfect. But I was sitting in the front row and I could see your knees knocking. I was scared.
Well, it was impressive. That's impressive.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
How was back in the day with the show like Antony and Cleopatra with Helen Mirren? What was the sort of protocol in rehearsal? Obviously, Helen Mirren wasn't the grand dame of theatre and film as she is right now. What was the approach? What was the rehearsal schedule? How did it work back then? Because a lot of people don't quite understand, people who might be in America or people who are in contemporary British theatre or Spanish theatre, they might not understand what the protocol and how it worked, the whole rehearsal process in something like the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Well, you're all in it together. You can't do it without each other. The whole play was written and existed far before you did, and so there was just a rehearsal call and everybody turns up, and I'm sure that the leading actors had private conversations with Adrian Noble about things, but Helen is wonderful in that she will try anything. She will do it and that was one of the reasons her Cleopatra was so brilliant. It's the best I've ever seen, and she's talked about, Cleopatra is talked about in the text as having infinite variety, and the reason and the way that Helen achieved that was that nothing was set in stone. It changed all the time. The people around her, I was playing Mardian, Soraka Cusack, Josette Simon, Ken Bones, we were all, all the people in her court. We were kind of like a school of tropical fish that followed her around everywhere. So every time we did the scene, it was different or somewhere else or all of that. I think shared theatre, what was it called? Shared experience, it was called, that Mike Alfreds ran. He on purpose had people change things. We didn't on purpose do that. It was just the way it was. Rome came on and they were pretty much the same every time. Mm-hmm. But Egypt had to be more emotional. And it was, I suppose I would have to say, I sound like I am a huge fan, but Helen probably taught me more about acting just by the way she was. She was never didactic, but she would try anything and you'd go on and listen to her. She would listen to you. I think she made sure that everybody on stage was as good as they could possibly be. She didn't compete ever. And actors that compete are so incredibly boring to me. Mm. But she would listen to you. So then, if you were good, all she had to do was listen to you and react. And scenes worked like that.
Exactly.
She was fabulously good.
Mm-hmm. There's something we were talking about the other day. You were lamenting the fact that the Shakespeare's words have somehow become less important in modern theatre. How would you characterize that?
I haven't seen a lot, but what I hear about is that people can't speak, or that they can speak, but they don't trust it. I have seen productions, and I won't name names, but everybody comes on and tries to be naturalistic, and you think, it isn't naturalistic. It is poetry. And if you define poetry, is written the way it is because it's the only way you can say it, if you say that. And a lot of people they sort of think, oh, it's really old-fashioned to do this and that. Well, it doesn't have to be. And you don't have to try so hard to make Shakespeare new. If you do it honestly, and you speak in full sentences, and you put the sense across, it's new every time you do it. It really is. I mean, I think he knew what he was doing slightly.
A little bit. It's interesting to talk about that, because it's a sort of touchstone for me, something who I've mentioned a lot when we're live and when I talk about actors of reference or actors who really blew me away when I saw them on stage.
Yes.
One of those was Mark Rylance.
Yes.
And Mark Rylance is the only way I can sort of describe when I saw him doing Hamlet is there's something quite shocking about it, in a good way, in the sense that you're kind of because you work with him a number of times and you work with him on film. So how does somebody like that, who's so quite different tonally in the way he approaches things, how does that work inside something like the Royal Shakespeare Company?
Well, I think he came, I think, straight from RADA, and he was a baby, but he just so talented. And Mark doesn't have rules. He threw all the rules out. Like Helen Mirren does that. They just throw the rules out. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. You find things and you see if they work. And Mark is always, at that time, he's always doing that. He always takes you by surprise, and he always acts not from the mind, but from the heart. He acts absolutely instinctively from the heart. And he's terribly lovable for all that, and brilliant.
Are there actors who had a negative reaction to him, because it's quite unconventional how raw it feels sometimes, how spontaneous?
I don't think so. People loved him. I think they loved him. He was different. I mean, I suppose when he was very young, sometimes he tried to be different. And I remember thinking, you don't have to try. You are. You are different. You're not like, anybody else. It's a huge gift to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting, because a lot of the time I've watched him, and I've certainly watched him in film. And it's interesting to see him, for example, in Bridge of Spies, because when Tom Hanks is in scenes with Mark Rylance, his acting changes. Tom Hanks changes, because he realizes he can't do all the same old numbers that he normally does.
All the tricks.
It's kind of like there's a weight of sort of authenticity that's sort of like dragging him down to the bottom.
Yeah.
So what happens when you go into plays cast, you go into the Royal Shakespeare Company? How long were you there for? And was there a point when you said, I've got to get out of here?
4 years, but I had to leave for about, let me think how long. About 6 months I left, because my mother was living in America and she was dying, and I had to go and do that. And then they allowed me to come back. And that's when I repeated Baby William Shakespeare. And then I went to Stratford the next year with them because I wanted to, and they allowed me to. And that's when I met Mark. He came at that season, and that's when Helen Mirren came. So yeah, there used to be a kind of shortcut to talking about Shakespeare's plays, because that's what they did. They concentrated on it. They used to understand that you can't get it perfect, but it will grow. When you open, you rehearse the show so it's as tight as it can possibly be, but then you have a whole year playing in Stratford for it to grow. And I always think that the theatre allows you to learn because you repeat things. You repeat them in front of an audience or audiences, and they teach you what they're getting. You hear it. You don't do that filming. Filming, there's not enough time. You kind of go in and you hit your mark and you do it and you go home, and you might learn subsequently when you see it or if somebody says something. The object isn't always to learn something, but it is a profession that offers you a lifetime education. It does. And I think the theatre, is wonderful. But I remember Sir Ralph Richardson used to say, that acting in the theatre was like a waking dream. You kind of organize the dream, but it's a dream. And you, yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah, it's
that's
nice. That's brilliant.
That's there's
w-
there's something that Ralph Richardson said when he was close to the end of his life. He said he said it's such a terrible shame. I was just working out how to do it.
yes.
It
Yeah.
when you say they, who are they in the Royal Shakespeare Company? Who decides? How is this organization?
Well, there were like 4 or 5 or 6 directors who worked constantly with each other. It was several designers were similar. I mean, they were always, each director, Terry Hands used to say, each good director has their own designer. I mean, I don't mean you own them, but there is somebody that you are simpatico with that can bring, it's very important what it looks like to you, what a production looks like to you. And I always think I've never been a director. I mean, a little bit I've taught, just a very little bit. But I always think that people who are directors see the world their way. That's why they're directors. It has to be like that. And that's kind of what they're leading. They don't simply lead the team over the hill. You can do, and there are different ways of doing that, but there are directors who are absolutely strict with every single thing you do. And that's not wrong. And then there's somebody like Peter Brook who would say, well, let's find out. And I don't know what it's going to look like. And and let's throw it around. But as long as you reveal the heart of what's been written, that's the point, however you approach that. And I think every actor has their own thing that they do. I mean, a lot of people adhere to certain systems and they think, oh, well, you need to learn Stanislavski or Meyerhold or whatever. And I am absolutely anti that. I think there is your way to act. I think it doesn't hurt you to know about all of those systems because, I attended the Central School of Speech and Drama. I think it's now called the Royal Central School. And the man who was the artistic director was George Hall. And he came in at a time when there was a kind of division between various tutors. And various students walked out and they created the Drama Center. So what was left of Central was that he said, all of those theories are in the library next door. You can read them. What we are as teachers is a panel of mirrors that can show you how you're doing. We have absolutely no interest in what you choose. I mean, I think anything an actor does to try to, short of murder, anything an actor does to try to bring a role off is fair. And I don't think actors should do anything other than take from their raw material. And by that, I mean the person that they're standing opposite. Same with directors. You cannot pretend that you've got Laurence Olivier when you haven't. You can only take what's in front of you and allow it to grow. You have to water the seed, really, and let it grow. Now, George used to say, this is a sort of comic thing he used to say, he said, it's a very good idea if you don't keep pulling the plant up by the roots to see if it's growing. So you plant it and you let it go. But
it's very clever.
I think a lot of
Very
people,
clever,
they talk
Larry.
and they do all of that. And I actually think, no. And I also don't know very many directors who know what it is that you do in order to get there. It may confuse them. Some of them might get quite cross because I don't discuss things, which may be an explanation as to why I am who I am. But yeah.
When the structure. What I meant, who are they? I meant, so there is all these people there. They are all working after one piece or one play after the other. But who decides who is next? Is a group? Is it people that decide? How it works? How does it work?
I think it was the directors. I was never present, but I think it was. It would not have been anybody running the theatre. It would have been the directors, the artistic director. And in that company, it was first of all Sir Peter Hall, and then it was Trevor Nunn, and then it was Terry Hands and Trevor Nunn, and then it was Terry Hands, and then so on and so forth. It then went to, I think, Adrian Noble and several people since, and they've just changed again. Tamara Harvey and Daniel Evans are going to try to run it. It's very difficult now. It's what used to happen is that it was actor-led. You got actors who could do Shakespeare, and actors were expected to be able to play a lot of different things. You didn't just do kind of typecasting, though sometimes that's inevitable, and it's not wrong. But they would say, we have somebody here this year who's a Cleopatra, or we can get somebody, but you have to have the person who can do the role, not just throw anybody into it. And I think they're trying to rethink that now, and I think that's disastrous.
Rethink in what sense?
It's disastrous. If you don't have the actor who can play the role, then you're stuck with something kind of second rate. They might say all the words in the right order, hopefully. I'm not sure that I can anymore, but you have to have the right person. And we all get a sense of each other as to, well, I'd like to see them do this, that, or the other. And I think if you had a company, then you think, well, so-and-so can play such and such, so-and-so can play such and such. And there was quite a lot of variety that went on. People didn't just play the same thing all the time. I mean, even the leads, they were leads. And the difference with a Shakespeare play as opposed to a naturalistic play or a Stanislavski is that, now I've lost my train of thought.
Yes, the difference of a Shakespeare play, you were saying, or
a contemporary piece.
Or a contemporary piece.
Yes, I mean, I can't. I'll have to come back to that. I can't remember what I was saying. I'm sorry.
Well, it's one of the things. I mean, when you go into drama school, one of the things they explain to you is we didn't choose all just the best actors. We chose a group of actors that we could sort of piece together and do a bunch of plays throughout the rest of the time that you're there.
Yes.
And there's a certain element that we all perceived, and everybody who's in drama school wants to go to the Royal Shakespeare Company because we're all taught in the classics. We're all given a classical training. We all know how to project. We know who Cicely Berry is. So we all think that to transition from drama school to the Royal Shakespeare Company, it's going to be more or less the same. That's kind of the way that we kind of predict it's going to go. We think because it's one womb of learning to another womb of performance, as it were. That's how it works. How much time?
But not now. That's what you were saying. I think the train of thought was that right now was disastrous because they
weren't trying to put together a company.
They are casting people. I mean, there are all sorts of political turmoils and reverberations going on at the moment, and you have to cast people. There are quota systems and all of that. And in terms of human lives, that's terribly fair. In terms of art, it doesn't always work. And you can't, if somebody can't play Cleopatra, there's no point in casting her as that.
Yeah.
There is no point. And you've done William Shakespeare a bad turn. You've done the audience a bad turn. Because if you got the right person, they could have the most wonderful experience. And I mean, I'm not talking about anything in particular now because I haven't been for many years to see Shakespeare. I don't know why, but I haven't.
You don't know why?
I guess I haven't been. Well, they stopped coming to London to the Barbican, and then they went other places. But I think when I have friends that I need to go and see, I go up to Stratford and see them. But I haven't done that for about 10 years, really, I think. And I always love and to see what people are up to. What I always think is that people should take you by surprise. There is no, I know a lot of people, they go to operas and they go to ballets and they want to see the same thing again and again and again and again. And I think that's lovely, but it's a bit stuck. What if something new happened? What would happen?
Yes. Yes.
And it's all acting, it's film acting is like that. You don't want people to guess what you're going to do and then you just do that.
What are you interested on watch, or on doing as an actor now? They are plays that they are, which kind of impact is comedies, is weird people. What you didn't do?
I would love to be in funny things now. I don't necessarily need to be in high art at all. I love things where you get to play a character and you get your own head and you get to make people laugh. I mean, I think the world has been so crushed by COVID for a long time and things like that. And I think people in theatre and artists in general tend to think that they're more important when they're serious, and they're not. Never to me are they. Because it reeks of ego, that.
Yeah.
And ego destroys almost everything. There's a very careful tightrope that we all walk, and sometimes we all fail. And that is the horrible thing, that we're terrified to do what we do and stand up in front of 3,000 people on any given night and do it. Or however many. Could be 20. And actors confuse, quite rightly, confidence, which you absolutely need, with self-importance. It sometimes goes into that, and then that stops everything. It's a really difficult equation. We meet a lot of people, do we not, who are just unbearable and who go on about themselves all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of the things I've been saying, Lisa, like people very often mistake praise and adulation for love, which is a big thing that we have as actors. If they applaud, if they say I'm wonderful, it means that they love me. No, it doesn't. Sorry about that.
I have to tell you, and I think I related this to you before, I was in something called The Invention of Love by Tom Stoppard, and it was Richard Eyre's last production at the National, and I played Oscar Wilde. And we were getting towards the final week before we did the technical. And I said to Michael Bryant, who was a brilliant actor, I said, I'm getting a little bit nervous now. And he said, that's only vanity. He said, no, I'm not being funny. He said, and I'm not being rude, but you're worried about what people think about you. And you're not playing you. It's your job to deliver what the playwright has written, however you can. And you have to use you. You have to use yourself. What else have you got but yourself?
Yes.
You've got your own, you've got your own brain, you've got your own heart. Usually you have your own timing, and that drives a lot of director despair, but that's me. And yeah.
I suppose when I mean, you know that because we spoke about that you are the reason that I was inspired to do theater again. I was for a very long time without doing theater.
It was his fault.
It was his fault.
I have searched up and down Assumpta to see what the hell I said to you.
No, you said you should do theater, That's what you said.
Oh, God. Oh, God. You should be careful what you say to Assumpta. She'll do it.
Yeah.
You should become a commercial pilot, Assumpta.
No, well,
Cut to.
that's too late. But I would love to do it.
Oh God.
But yeah, and it's because in the journey that we have as actors, perhaps sometimes we're kind of lost in the sense that we lost the reason why we are there. And when you are doing really a lot of, film acting or acting on film, you lose a little bit this sense of the proximity of people, the joy, the service that you do as an actor to some people, to change their expressions, to make them feel.
But that's also what I mean by you learn by doing theatre. You do.
Mm-hmm.
They're right there. They come and talk to you afterwards, or you just hear them laugh or cry or whatever, or you hear the seat banging up as they're leaving when you've bought them. But,
yes.
Yeah.
But I would say it's something else, which is something that we forget, and it's something that we've. I was writing about that recently, and I was talking about somebody today. Is the importance of encouragement, even if you're a Assumpta Serna and you've done all these films and all these different things. The profound effect that somebody going, you should do theatre, can have on you. Yeah. Because literally, as actors or people in this particular world, the word that we hear most often is no, please go away. We are given so little encouragement, and it can become at any stage of what you're doing. It's so very, very important that sometimes that we forget that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also that, I think there is a point in film that is the immediacy, as you said, in television. Television also is much so, but both mediums are more or less, you have to really convince of what you're doing. You have to know the medium. So after that, everything is easy. Well, in theater, you never know the outcome. You don't never know, what's going to happen, how you're going to, deliver, how the other actor's going to deliver, how the people are going to be there. And you're more sometimes freer, I think, on the communication because you don't have a frame. You have a frame, but it's bigger. So what is for you doing theater, the times that you really believe that you had achieved something or that you learned something, you don't have this need actually to pass it into others because you know so much, you had done so much, and it's weird to me that you didn't want to direct or you didn't pass it also as a teacher to others, no? Why do you think is that, Michael?
Well, a friend of mine, I am joking slightly, but I'm also serious. Somebody said to me, well, you should teach because you should give it back now. And I thought, give it back? I've spent my entire life trying to get it. I'm not giving it back. but, yeah. I think another thing that I'd like to say is that for goodness sake, whatever you're playing, even if you're murdering people and stomping around in blood, you should have fun at this job. Mm-hmm. You should have fun. Most people in the world are not lucky enough to do something like this. And it's a joy. It can be a joy. Even the bad days, at least it gives you something to bitch about at dinner. Do you know? It's fun.
Yes.
And people they get very, very tied up with how important it is and this and that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but why you didn't have the need to pass to others? There is something with learning that there arrives a point, I think, no, that you also want to change things and the way that you see things, or you want to communicate, the things that you learn from others. But you never had this inside you.
Not really. I mean, people have said to me, well, Mark Rylance once said to me, I should write. And you think, yes, I know, but I have nothing. I have a turn of phrase, but I have nothing to say. I have nothing that I want to say. I'm interpretive. I would rather interpret what somebody else writes. It's just the way I am, I guess. Maybe I'm lazy. Could
but
be.
but this conversation that we had, it had so many jewels, so many jewels for other people. You know what I mean? That you said, like Ellie is saying, "Wow," you know, you say, I absolutely loved what you just said." One of the people here says, "Acting,
I'm sorry, where am I?
acting is a permanent education." For instance, that's one of the sentences you just said. Here. I absolutely
Yeah.
love
Oh, yes.
acting is a permanent education. So many things like that you said. I don't know. I think that it would be very interesting to have to start
Well,
this.
I look. This is one of the things. It happens with
I mean,
directing.
I want to inspire you to
Yes,
direct,
we're gonna-
like
we're gonna-
you did
we're
to
gonna
me to
bother.
act in theatre. That's why.
You're gonna come around to your house, send a car there, and if you don't get in it, they're gonna bundle you in.
No,
What-
but
what-
don't.
No, but one of the things happens with teaching, for example,
Mm-hmm.
is you basically, most people need to be dragged kicking and screaming to teach something to begin with. And then by the time they're in the pool, they're like, oh, the water's not as cold as I thought it was. And then before you know it, you're swimming.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when before I started teaching, you were like, it was like trying to give a shower to a cat. It was like, no,
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
want to go.
Yeah.
And then when you're there, you understand it. It's the fundamental thing of saying, do I have the right to talk with any degree of authority about this particular subject? That doubt disappears instantaneously when you start.
Well, it's
talking.
nothing about authority. It's about trying to what you learn from others, pass it to others. That is really what is interesting.
We're gonna have to, Michael. We're gonna have to Shanghai you and bring you to Spain.
Yes, and to direct or something.
Or a very few times at places like the Actors Centre. And it's just like a one-off for a day. Inevitably, you do learn something by helping people.
Always.
Through it. You do. And you learn things even about yourself.
Yes.
And
You learn how to systemize things and how to put them in a context that that you feel that the people understand, or you change because the other one didn't understand, and you look for words and you look for concepts that they are useful, that had been useful for you sometimes.
I think I found it easy. It was not frightening to teach, and I directed one or two things just lightly. I've directed a cabaret artist several times, and I've directed something like play readings that I might have been in and things like that. I find that very easy. It's just, I would rather act, I guess.
Yes, it's interesting because they were saying that I remember The Ladies of the Camellias, one of the plays that I liked from my friend writer Lillian Garrett, and there was a phrase is a play between Sarah Bernhardt and Eleonora Duse. It was just it was a kind of very nice play. It
A
was
sort of fictional
comedy.
encounter between the two of them, and they were both in Paris at exactly the same time, weren't they?
Exactly.
These two grand dames of European theatre, and it was like a showdown at high noon.
Yeah, and it was very interesting because it was disguised was all the beauty of the actor. It really was an homage to the actor, and the need or not to have a director. And
Yeah.
no, and because at that time it was just the figure of the director was starting to really appear like the thing, but before was the actor. And what we've seen over the years is that other people had come, the directors of photography they were the kings of the set, then and now is the the artificial intelligence that is gonna eat us all with potatoes. I mean, there is always something that it really dominates whatever it is. And I think that what you are saying, well, I'm an interpreter. I like to talk, apart from being a humble thing, is also a way of knowing yourself, perhaps, much better than a normal person that says, well, I am like that. I don't need to. I don't know if you have perhaps a fear of this ego that
You're not going to let this go, are you?
No, I mean, for me, it's interesting to understand that, how the people do their decisions in their lives as actors.
Well, the other thing
how
is,
they keep going with the idea that, no, that's what I really want to do. That's the only thing I want to do in my life.
well, the other thing is, if I can speak for Michael for a second, is that he recognizes something that he's excellent at, and he feels more comfortable and most competent and adept at, and it's the most fun part of it. I don't know. I mean, I everybody gets their rocks off doing different stuff.
Yes. No, I was interested, Michael, because it's a pleasure to act with you, and I would like also. It's just it's very interesting.
Had a great deal of fun, didn't we?
Yes, we had.
I have a question here coming in from Lorena Fernandez Carrillo, who is in Los Angeles, California, and Pasadena. She says, could you share a few stories from behind the scenes of the making of Love Actually? Because apparently some people have seen that movie. By the way, your performance really touched my heart in the scenes with Laura Linney. Explain how you came to be in that film and what the process of that was, because the world and his wife has seen that film at least 3 times. How did that come about?
I was in that film because the casting director, Mary Selway, probably had seen me do That Murderer. I don't know what she saw. I didn't know how she knew I could do an American accent. But when I went, I had to come. I was in California, and they sent me to come and audition. And I came back to England, and she rang me up. It's the only time a casting director ever rang me before I went into them. And she said, I wanted to know if there's anything you need to know before you come in. And I thought, well, that's very, very kind. Do you know? And I said, well, what accent? And she said, what kind of American accent? And she said, you were honestly the only person I could think of who could play this. And I mean, I never understood why that was the case, but thank God I was the only person. I played, but I had to go in and meet Richard and put something on tape. And they were, I think, pleased with that. And he let it be known to me that the role was based on somebody quite close to him, though not at all the same, but a very similar sort of thing. And I remember thinking, oh my God, he's going to be really difficult about this because it's very, very personal.
Touchy, yeah.
Well, the opposite. He was just so welcoming and helpful.
Well, for the people that are watching us, you can see that the lead scene of Michael with Laura, that it's fantastic. That you are really beyond, and it's very subtle and it's so moving. What a pity that it was not in the actual movie, no? That scene.
Well, I loved doing it, and also Laura Linney is brilliant. She just is. She's, she's one of those actresses who's very much as you would imagine she is by seeing her. She's very available as a human being and as an actress.
Nice.
And wonderful.
Mm-hmm. She's very present, right? It's very present. She's there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's one of the things which I think is undervalued very often amongst actors is being a nice person.
Yes.
It really means a lot. Do you know what I mean?
To everybody, really.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we've all brushed shoulders, brushed elbows with genius, and when genius is a pain in the ass, it makes my life rather difficult. Not only because they're a pain in the ass, because it just all seems rather unjust. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that's the most irksome about it. When you were doing Love Actually, was it like a huge machine that you were stepping into, or was there still a degree of intimacy in the shoot?
I had, I guess, a costume fitting. I had to wait we did a huge read through, at which the press were invited. So we're there with Emma Thompson and Bill Nye and everybody else in the room, and we all meet up and we read this thing. And then I waited for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then I was brought in for about 2 days to do it. And I'd learnt it, I'd thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. I had no idea how it was going to be done, but we just did it. And we did it about 1,000,000 times in one day, so that they'd have choices.
Mm-hmm.
But it was great to do. I mean, it was a great job.
You had what? How many scenes in these 2 days?
Sorry?
How many scenes you had in these 2 days?
I think I had 3. One is only like us giving each other Christmas presents in the mental institution or the mental hospital, or she's giving me presents.
Mm-hmm.
One was the scene where I hit her, which is the scene that has remained. And then one scene was cut that people can still see on the DVD.
On
where
YouTube. Yeah, that was a beautiful thing. Your transformation there, when you see that, well, I am ill, is very nice, very touching, moving.
No, it was wonderful to do. I suppose if they had kept that scene, and that kind of scene would have made it a slightly different movie. Maybe a little bit less feel good, but you think, yes, but all sorts of things in the world are love, actually, aren't they? And character choosing to look after this very difficult brother in a very difficult place and not having the love life she could have had. I mean, that made a lot of people angry, that I would bring up and destroy her life. But of course, that's life, isn't it? That's real.
What is, when you find a difficult actor, meaning, well, let's define what is a difficult actor. Someone that doesn't listen.
You, Assumpta, basically.
No. Tell me, Michael, what for you? What is the most difficult actor? Not the name, but I mean the traits. No, the
traits.
Traits that you.
I have 2 or 3 times, I think, and I don't know this, and I don't know why, been the victim of jealousy.
Jealousy.
And when an actor decides, and it's usually in the theatre, it's not usually in film, there's not time for people to sit and think about it. They can make your life difficult or get you replaced or whatever they do. And that's happened to me again and again. I mean, about 2, 3 times. It's very upsetting. It's very upsetting because nobody will ever tell you whether you were good or bad. You just feel that you must have been terrible. But then people say, but that's not the case. And you think, well, it's very difficult to do that. And I think as a result, I have vowed I would never, ever, whatever happened, unless they were personally destructive to me in a scene on purpose, I would never get rid of an actor. If they were difficult, if they weren't, a lot of actors in the history of films and things have had people replaced because they didn't think they were good enough and they wanted it to be better. And I understand that. But I think it's a little bit like if you're going to go down on a sinking ship, you all need to be the rats. You all need to be rats. And you can go down on that ship and drown, but because you are in it together. And I just think, you're not there on your own. I have once or twice been in plays where more or less I wasn't on my own, but I was the one who spoke all the time. I just hated that because I just felt so isolated from people. I did a production of Shakespeare's The Tempest. I played Prospero, and it was a very beautiful production. But the idea was that the island for Prospero was his deathbed, and that therefore I didn't really act with anybody. I acted alongside them, with them in my memory. I found that so lonely and dreadful. I just did. I think probably it was fine for the audience, but I just thought, I need to talk to people. I'm much happier because it also helps if you don't know what's going to happen next. and somebody else coming in, you know, and if they're wrong, if some actor comes and is out for attention or has a very different idea to you or whatever, and it's wrong, I always think that is the director's job to sort out how it goes. It is the director's production, not the actor's. The actor's got to be in it, but it is the director's production. And therefore, finally, the director must sort it out. And you must do that, I think. If you don't do that, then you've got the most unhappy mess.
Yes, because most of the times they don't know how to solve it, right? And they don't know how to communicate also with actors, so that makes things difficult. Yes, when that happens, when you find a piece that is not oiled, a piece that is bad with himself, or is, is like punishing himself or punishing others, I have in my experience people that they were in a verge of something also personally. That they were in a phase where they had, I don't know, perhaps drunken people, no, drunk actors that they went into, and apart from being a kind of a disrespect to others, but also there is a point where I always try to cover them up. I don't know how, but I have to.
You mean cover for them?
Cover for them.
Yeah.
Cover for them because, I think that
There's also very interesting.
But at the same time, I hate them for it because all my energy is trying to cover for them instead of playing a scene, joyfully and at the best circumstances, trying things,
It's very interesting what you're talking about. I understand what happens. There's a very delicate thing. If the person who's the lead of something is not particularly strong, it's very dangerous to surround them with people who are more interesting and adept and competent.
Yes.
That becomes one of the tricky things is if we lower the bar, then the bar has to be low for everyone, because otherwise everybody else comes in and just sort of devours it.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when we were doing Sharp, because you've worked with Peter Postlethwaite.
Yes.
Right? Who is a force of nature. I don't know how you work with him in theater, but he is. They don't make those anymore. I mean, they really don't. No, and well, he would turn up on set and he would do things that you would think you can't do that on camera, and he would do it and it would work. And not only would it work, you were like, oh my god, it's amazing.
Like what?
Well, no, just his performance. His performance was so,
over the top sometimes. You mean?
Well, no, it's completely outrageous and complete commitment to his outrageousness. Mm-hmm. But his complete commitment to it sort of made it work, and it made you all go, maybe we should be taking this all a little bit more seriously, guys. I'm not sure, because it was totally full on. I mean, what he was up to, and it was made out of
I love that. I love when an actor is there and he's giving everything himself or herself. It's so nice because then immediately you have to go up there and then it's fun. No, then it's fun. If not, it's kind of boring because you play safe and that is never nice.
Going from one an enormous romantic comedy to another one, Francisco Peramos, who's also in Los Angeles, is asking about how is it working on Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven, because talking about going into a filmmaking machine, that must be enormous to step into that. Where were you? Did you shoot in England for that?
No, we shot in Morocco, and I had shingles. So I arrived in Morocco in the middle of this sand, having to wear this kind of monk's robe, which was itchy to begin with. And I had all of this terrible lotion I had to put on and an antibiotic. Fortunately, I had a very light case. It only lasted a week. But I don't know, I just got this little role, and it's mostly cut. I'm only in the film now for about 13 seconds. You see me bow to Eva Green. But I was Brendan Gleeson's private priest and used on the battlements when people were coming towards him for a battle to be his binoculars, and I was very, very fat at the time, and it was sort of a funny role. And for some reason, the character was called Humphrey. That's never mentioned in the film, and I don't know where the name came from, but I was Humphrey. And I was on it very briefly. I went twice out there to film it. And it was very pleasant, and everybody, a lot of it is great time in the hotel, really. I mean, when you finished.
Yes.
I love all that desert thing when it goes cold, and so in the middle of the hottest possible place in the world, they light fires in the fireplace at night because it's got cold. It's quite wonderful. But yeah, it was an experience, but I had a lot of things going on. I had a best friend dying in London as well. So I was coming and going. It was a strange time, but I was hardly in it at all. Ridley Scott was incredibly nice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of it's very interesting whenever people talk about actors or directors they've worked with. It's always the question, how were they? It's not like, were they an amazing actor with a wonderful process and a deep and profound understanding of the craft? No, the question is, could you have a conversation? Were they decent enough people?
Yes, that's all we want, really, no?
Yeah, it's all we hope for.
We hope for, yeah.
I mean, I hardly know an actor who doesn't do their best. Whatever that is, they are doing their best. They really are. And so what can you do? I mean, I suppose I have two rules, and I don't believe in rules. You've heard me say that, but I have two rules. Going back to, you talking about people that are very brilliant in things. Never, ever be the best thing in anything. Always give yourself something to reach for. I have been in one or two things where people say, oh, you're the best thing in that. And you think, well, that's a dead end. Need to try to have people better than you. It's nothing, you can't do anything about it. It's the casting people and everybody else. And the other rule, it sounds like I'm joking, but it's my favorite rule. Do not bore the nice people they paid.
Do not what?
Bore the nice people they paid.
They paid. Which means, because a lot of actors are going on about their theories and doing this and that, and they can take forever. There is a kind of actor who rolls their own cigarette that talks about the importance of everything, and I'm just snoring inside by the time, But don't bore people with your theories about things. Get on with it. Tell the story. No?
I don't know if I mentioned that because we both have known in the past personally Tim Curry. Tim Curry told me a story of doing Annie with John Huston, and he said John Huston calls me up one day and he says, "Tim, it's John. Are you the type of actor that wants to talk endlessly for hours about his goddamn role?" And he went, "No, I'm not, John." He said, "I'll see you on set."
How wonderful. Well, that's right. That's right. I know people that ring up the director or the producer and arrange special meetings to talk about everything, including the schedule, and you think they really don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Get it together for yourself and don't step on other people's time. Mm-hmm. We've all heard about various actors and actresses who have people sent out of the room so that they can find their private moment in a role. And I mean, I know that it's very difficult trying to find things sometimes, but please, everybody's there to rehearse. They're all there to rehearse. If you need special time, do it out of rehearsal time. Mm-hmm. I won't name names, but it's infuriating. And the director allow that to happen.
What?
The directors allow it to happen.
Yeah.
There's some actors who are hell bent on making it all look like the most difficult job in the world. It's the thing I always used to say is like, you can be David Niven, or you could be, Christian Bale. I mean, and we'll go, who's David Niven? I go watch it. It looks like literally falling off a log. It couldn't be any easier. Or somebody who was, was a great influence, when I was very young was Richard Burton. The presence which exists only sort of just with his voice more than anything else. There was a sense of it, although he was almost certainly incredibly drunk throughout all of it. There was a sense that it wasn't the most difficult thing in the world, And I think what the sort of method actors and all the kind of actor studio thing that grew up in the sort of like the early 70s they came from New York, etc., was all of a sudden showed everybody how difficult it could be. Instead of how easy it was.
Yes.
And it all became something of a chore. It all became very worthy and considerably less interesting. But necessary at that point in time.
But you see, that's what I like about...
That's what the drama center was. The drama, they broke off and they became sort of like quite extreme, and where are they now? But they lasted a very long time. Same thing with East 15. They became they were very well known for being very sort of methody and very extreme in preparation and all the rest of it, while everybody else was trying to work out how to grow a good goatee and look good in tights. Which is extraordinarily important.
Says Lorena. Lorena from LA says, your vulnerability is very powerful. Do you consider yourself a method actor? How do you blend your privacy with imagination?
Repeat that, would you?
Says, your vulnerability is very powerful. Do you consider yourself a method actor? Do you blend your privacy with imagination?
I am sort of a method actor, but I also think I'm also, it's that thing when Stanislavski first published, I think it was An Actor Prepares. Was that the first book?
That's the first one, yeah.
Then he didn't publish for a long time, and they set up the method school in Strasbourg in New York, and they did all of that about emotional memory and all of that. And then he published a book about physically needing to be able to do this, and this. And you thought, see, you've kind of got to have all of that. And so it's like another way of putting it is you have to be in the role on stage, and about 3% of you needs to sit in the audience and watch yourself to make sure you don't boil over. I think so. Yes, I am sort of a method actor. I mean, I do believe in a lot of my favorite actors are method actors. I don't like cold technical actors. I can understand the need for it. And sometimes, if you're doing a farce or something, you have to be incredibly technical. It's to do with timing and everything else. But vulnerability, I suppose if I have another rule, let me think about this for a minute, excuse me. Vulnerability, I think an actor's greatest strength is his own personal greatest weakness. If you can show your own weakness, you are a stronger actor than anybody else. A lot of actors play their image, and a lot of male actors play a very strong image. It's tied up with sexuality and everything else, and what they hope people will think of them. And I don't think they're moving. I think people that show you their inside and admit that that bit is weak, I think that is the strongest acting you ever see.
Also, it's the strongest character you'll ever play.
That's right.
It's one of the great mistakes in recent memory to write simply strong, powerful, empowered women is a great disfavor to a character, because the real reason a character is strong is their capacity to overcome and reveal their vulnerability.
Yeah, and
That's right.
And spectators and audience really relates to vulnerability. It doesn't relate to high power, all know-it-all characters.
Well, it's a great testament. I mean, it's by no accident that the most famous character in all of theatre and possibly all of literature itself is a man who is on the cusp of taking his own life, doesn't understand, exactly where everything is going and what it all means, and moves between strength and weakness on the turn of a dime, and it's Hamlet. It's the fundamental philosophical question, which I think Camus talks about, which is the ultimate question of to live or not live, that sort of thing. And one of the great mistakes that people are making is in the attempt to show women as being strong and empowered, is they're showing them strong and without any form of vulnerability, which makes them contemptible. And that's one of the issues that we
have now. Yes.
That we have now to write politically
characters.
from something.
Yeah. Well, no.
I know that going back to George Hall, who ran the course at Central, always tried to get people to be a little bit like the boy next door or the girl next door. And what that meant was that if the audience can recognize in themselves who you are, you've done the job. You've kind of got to hand it to the audience and let them act with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I mean by they will teach you. You have to, it's no good being kind of we live in a society that seems to want like superheroes, and you think that's because nobody is. But it's not very interesting, really, because those don't really exist.
Well, the great heroes are the ones that they are weak, and they do things without really wanting to do it, and that is the most sympathetic empathetic characters is when you can feel the vulnerability on them, and that is what makes you being like them, because nobody has an image of themselves like someone that knows everything. We are kind of struggling with ourselves and our needs.
But that's the element of tragedy. Tragedy, tragedy, which pride comes before a fall and all the rest of it. Tragedy is invariably based on somebody who's incapable of accepting or even understanding that they are vulnerable, and thus they are destroyed. That's sort of the way that kind of works in one way or another. But the other thing, which is a kind of tough thing to get your head around, which is the idea that the audience is drawn in ineluctably. Ineluctably, I learned that word from Little Malcolm in his struggle against the eunuchs. I remember that word. When he says, "Women are ineluctably drawn to me," right? So what happens is they're drawn in, and this is one of the things that people feel insecure about, is the uninflected moment in the theatre. The uninflected moment in the theatre is when the audience leans forward and goes and invests meaning in whatever is happening, whatever is taking place.
Yes.
And the trouble is, because everybody's so desperately in needs to make sure everybody knows what's happening at every given moment all the damn time, is, I always say, the audience, whether it's film, TV, or certainly in theatre, the audience is a detective. They're attempting to piece everything together and trying to work out what the hell is going on. And
you see, that's why you don't have to reveal everything. That's what you said before, Michael.
Yeah, of course.
You have... No? You have to leave, not give yourself everything, to reserve something, because then the people are more interested to understand, what is the twinkle there.
Talking about vulnerability, Oscar Wilde is probably the greatest genius, and simultaneously probably the most, what could I say, the most vulnerable public figure of his generation. What did you learn about Oscar Wilde by playing Oscar Wilde?
Well, first of all, I thought Tom Stoppard's take on it is the best I've ever read. Mm-hmm. I only got so far in the role, and I was replaced. I wasn't fired, but I was replaced when they moved on, because obviously there was something not right with what I was doing. and I never found out because nobody could talk to me about it. But what I learned, what that play was about, was that love does not exist, that it is an invention. You decide people love you. And that was very interesting. And I also learned that Oscar Wilde was and lived a very emotional life, as seen in this play. Whereas Houseman, at least for the first part of his life, appeared to be academic and didn't. And then I think it's not seen in this play, but later on did have quite an emotional life, I think, but I don't know. Yes, that was just, but it was the things that Tom wrote to say were simply brilliant. One after another, after another, after another. I was only on for about 10 minutes. But it was an incredibly moving speech to think about. It was, that's all I can say about that.
No, it's sort of fascinating that Oscar Wilde being sort of the ignored, shunned, and abjectly destroyed voice of his particular generation, that he's still it still works. Still, the problem with the importance of being earnest is every single line's a belter. That every single one works. If you accept the laugh that comes from it, you'll be there for 4.5 hours. Because it's absolutely nonstop, and it still works, and it still works like a Swiss watch. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I did Oscar Wilde a long time ago, and you kind of have to kill your babies. That's one of the things that happens there. The thing with why was there such an affinity between you and Michael? Do you think, Assumpta? Where did that all come from?
Well, I think we respect each other as actors. That's the first thing.
Yes.
I think that we both believed in, that was always something surprising that could come. And I also think that, we, I don't know, we needed to be together also because, there was a lot of people in that show. And I think that, there was a lot of noise. And I think we give each other peace, by going to breakfast together or going to have dinner together. It was like, okay.
The breakfast was good, I got to tell you.
Humor, really.
What?
We have shared humor.
Yes.
Very similar in some ways.
Yes. Also.
Oh, the question that the lady from Los Angeles asked, the last question, I don't think I quite answered the part of that. Now, can you elucidate that for me?
So, so the question was, about the method acting thing, which I think one of the things about method acting is, if we want to be true about what we're talking about, which I think is Strasberg's method, which everybody thinks what it is. I think most people who they consider to be, in big quotes, method actors have never actually, studied all that sort of stuff. So it's sort of coincidental. So anybody who takes extreme measures to achieve a sort of physical, emotional state to play a role is now considered to be a method actor. So I think it's a sort of an erroneous thing. I think a lot of it's macho nonsense a lot of the time. I think it's a lot of people swinging their dicks about because they're scared of doing something which is effectively quite light-footed and effete, which is being an actor. So they have to turn it into some kind of, pissing contest from sometimes. I think what Michael said is incredibly profound about something that we've talked about before, the fact that an actor prepares, made its way to the East Coast of the United States. A guy called, Lee Strasberg read it, developed his method, and then a couple of other books turned up, creating a role, etc., etc. And they
And the
basically
last one?
and basically Stanislavski was like, you know what I was saying in those other couple of books? Kind of changed my mind on that. I think it's a little bit dangerous if we go too far down there. So let's just go back to the first book again, because I think there's good stuff there. So it was a whole going down the one road the wrong direction. The other thing that she says is, how do you blend privacy with imagination? I'm not quite sure how to. I don't quite understand that question. Do you understand that question? Translating it from Spanish into English.
¿Cómo mezclas tu privacidad con la imaginación?
Yeah, over to you.
How do you blend your privacy with imagination?
I don't quite get that.
No, I have to think it over also. I think she doesn't want to say privacy. Can you, Lorena, try to understand a little bit better this question? Because it's true that we are a little bit puzzled by it.
This is an interesting thing, because it always occurs to me, like from when I went to drama school. Is there anything that you learned at drama school which went on to be useful? I mean, really useful. There's sort of a touchstone that you return to.
Lots of things, really. But I mean, I can't enumerate them right now. But yes, I found it useful. I think drama schools. I was talking about the confidence thing. What drama school does is you can't teach somebody to act, I think. You can either act or you can't act. But you can learn how to relax with the fact that you're going to go through the most ghastly thing and still be able to do it, even when you're scared to death. And I think drama school spends 3 years making you breathe deeply and relax and not do too much and do all of those things. And I always think about all those things whenever I perform, particularly not so much filming, because they can do it again right now. But on stage, you're on show and you have one go. And so when it works, when it's all running like a machine, it's absolutely wonderful. And often it happens after you've played it for a little while, but sometimes it's pretty touch and go.
Yeah.
Michael, I was to ask you. I was looking for the thing. I've read a play that I really liked. I mean, it makes me laugh, and that is weird. So I wanted to know if you know the play. Is Michael Frayn, that I think you had played things.
I was his years, yes.
Okay, so I read a play by him. It was called Chinaman. Do you know that play? Well, I really laugh. I'm going to give it to you, and see, I'm very interested to see what you think. I think I have a PDF in English.
He is the most wonderful writer. He's also the most wonderful man.
Really?
I was in a very appreciative author. I mean, wonderful. Wonderful.
Because I love to do that here, because it's really theater. It's my way of doing an homage to to really theater. It's all this. Well, we'll comment on it in one of our Sundays.
I mean, it's a farce, right?
It's a farce, and it's such a delicate puzzle. No,
I think your ambition these days is to have the opportunity to be extremely silly.
Yeah, it's very silly too.
which is a much underrated thing. Silliness.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was wonderful. It's Chinaman by Michael Frayn. It's are short stories that he wrote. He wrote like 3 or 4, and then the people used to do them together. But if you actually separate them, they're
short plays.
The short plays, yes. One is Chinaman, the other one is The Two of Us, and they are doing these two together. But anyway, Chinaman, I just I laugh all the time that I read it. So I like to do.
Well,
it
you always had a sort of fetish for the British.
Yeah, well, that is probably why I was spending all this time with Michael, because you're really British. I love that.
Well, send me this play because I'd love to read it.
Okay, I will.
I was in another play of his, apart from Donkey's Years. I was on television in something called Landing on the Sun, which I think started off being a novel or a story. I can't remember. And I played some government official, but it was that was fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
But no, he's a wonderful man. He was absolutely wonderful to work for.
He must be old now, no?
Yes.
Must be very old. Okay,
Well,
so
that's what he said. He always came around and said, "You've made an old playwright very happy."
There's
nice,
absolutely
nice.
nothing that would please an actor more than hearing that. And also, there's nothing that pleases a writer more, speaking as somebody who's done both of them, is to see something and you go, well, that's it. Got nothing else to add. You know, thank you for making it all look good. You know what I mean? It's one of those particular things. It's very interesting from having directed and written a play that we did in Merida. One of the interesting aspects about it is the idea of serving the author, because being the director and author at the same time as a co-author with you, there's another thing which is above that, which is the actor, the author, and the director are also serving another thing, which is the entire point of the story, which is the entire thing that you're trying to do. So the idea is that you're actually trying to serve something which is even higher than that, and you'll do whatever you can to make it work, up to and including cutting stuff, removing stuff, and completely changing stuff, because at the
and
end
when you are with the audience, you really, have to...
as the great man once said, don't bore them. They paid for this.
Yeah, you can be bored at home alone, and you don't have to spend money. You don't have to go out and buy a ticket to be bored. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, but this is the other thing is that I've been in the theatre and I've been bored within moments. How does that work? How on earth does that work? And then the first thing you do is you go, oh my God, how long is this?
Yes.
And the curious thing here is in Spain, they have no interval.
You think, where's the exit?
Yes. My goodness, I'm in the middle.
I think I might have to feign a medical emergency right now.
Or if I have a friend, it's like, okay, what I'm going to say.
Do you have a strategy for speaking to people after you've watched their play and it's been terrible? Do you have any words of advice apart from running away?
Say well done, because you can always mean at least you were brave enough to stand up and do it. Just say well done. They'll never believe you. And they never believe me. I would never go back and tell the truth. Ever.
No?
Because they don't want the truth. They want to know they were wonderful, at least particularly on a press night. If they ask you gently later, you can be but you're not their director. It's not up to you to give them notes. And what you felt about it may be as much a part of what you just had for dinner when you went in, and maybe you just don't feel like watching that. I'm quite a mood watcher. There are things I go and I'm just not in the mood for them. And then I see them years later and I think, oh, that's the most fantastic movie or whatever, and I don't know what was the matter with me.
Well, there's another thing. I don't like when I go and see a play. I mean, the actors could be. It doesn't really matter. The thing that kills me is when I see the director has done something. That's the thing that thoroughly annoys me. That's the person who I really wanted to, walk up and slap.
I see ideas instead of
storytelling. Where they're trying they're going, look at me.
That's what I largely mean about Shakespeare. There are directors, and they're quite famous. And when you go to their show, you find out what the director thought.
Yeah.
You don't get one beat more than that. You don't get what might have happened should something else have been the case. You don't, it's just, I thought this. Everybody in this cast is blah, 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 and all of that. And yeah. And I also think playing any character, this is just for an actor, it's fine to show how down and out and everything else they are, or whatever's affecting them, or mentally ill, or whatever the part is. I think it's a good idea, if you can do it, always, to hint at what might have been had that not been the case. It rounds out the human being a bit more. To understand.
That's sort of the genius of Hamlet. The great tragedy is the death of is the death of a poet. That's the real tragedy of Hamlet, of all the. It's also the beautiful thing when Prince Hal kills Hotspur and says, "This great soul who now occupies two paces of the most of the earth," as it were. I can't remember what the quote is directly, but it's the wonderful thing is the idea of what it could have all been. That's a very good point. My tip for when you go and see a play which really doesn't work, and I'm being generous, is we've had to do this with a lot of films because it's a little trickier with films.
Yeah,
because it wasn't an off night. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like they didn't have a bad night when they showed you their movie. This is their movie.
Yes.
And what you do is you go, "You did it again." You did it again.
So you did it again is your advice.
My
advice. Your advice, Michael, is
well done.
Well done. Okay. Okay.
Well done. And you can mean that, and genuinely, because they bothered, they turned up, they remembered their lines, and they did them.
Yes, well done. Yes.
Well, there's also a certain kind of like the brothers in arms things where you go kind of like, well done, eh? Where it's kind of like, we know how that worked. Well done.
Okay,
the worst thing, if they've given a performance, is you can say, "What about you?" Yeah.
Yeah, it was a perfect runtime. Perfect length.
I mean, if somebody would have come back, I suppose, and say to me, "Well done," I'd think,
You bastard. You bastard. Yeah. As Ellie says, why not both? Well done. You've done it again.
Well,
well, you have to know what they did before.
What about you? Well done. You've done it
Did
again.
it again. There we go. Just turn up with that on a T-shirt and just point at it. Just go, there you go.
Alexander will do.
Nobody needs to be depressed after they've done a play. Go, if you're going to go back, have something nice to say. They never believe me. I mean, because they know that I criticize things and they've heard me elsewhere, so he's lying. But you think, at least they can't say, "He was perfectly horrible to me" when they went back.
You wanted to say what Alexander says here.
Yeah, Alexander says something in Spanish. I'll translate. Hola, Assumpta y Scott. Qué pena no saber tanto inglés, lo que me pierdo de no poder interactuar con los tres, pero bueno, tendré que conformarme con la posterior traducción si ello es posible. So, yes, we're going to translate that, Alexander.
Así que vamos a traducirlo después, que puedes verlo con subtítulos en castellano, en inglés.
Because he says, "I'm sorry, I don't know enough English, I cannot understand things," so I will say,
"Yeah, Michael, you can learn Spanish. It only took me 4 weeks."
Okay.
Well done.
Yes.
Okay, so it's almost 2 hours. I think
right.
we have to leave.
Well, we have to thank you profoundly, Michael, for remember where we are. The Spain awaits you like some great oiled whore, the other side of the English Channel.
Well, I once came to Madrid and played. I've also filmed in Spain, but I came and I played the Maria Guerrero.
Maria Guerrero, yes, wonderful theatre.
Of all things, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. And then we went to Almagro. And that was absolutely we had to throw the set away, it wouldn't fit inside. But that was absolutely wonderful.
It's very nice, Almagro. It's a very nice.
Have no idea. It was right back at the beginning of my career.
It's was it ridiculously hot?
No, it was about May.
Oh, okay. Because they have another festival in July, August, and
still now
we went to see Berkoff there.
Yeah.
And I'd never been in a theatre that was hotter before in my life. When we did Merida, the show kicks off at 11 p.m. The reason it kicks off at 11 p.m. is because you need to wait till 11 p.m. so it drops to 39 degrees.
Okay.
It's pure and it's unadulterated comedy. If they don't sort out some kind of spray thing to cool everybody down, it's not going to get any cooler, trust me.
Says Francisco Péramos, it's very nice because, that's what you get from people. I mean, from you, Michael. Look at what he says, Francisco. He says, thanks, great couple, and thanks a lot, Michael, for your kindness and knowledge. It's good.
Oh, how nice.
It's very, very, it's good. You are kind.
It has been a great pleasure, and perhaps I shall come.
Yes.
You shall.
You shall. We shall. We will
Right.
regale you. Just don't do it in the dead of July, because it might as well be freezing cold. Because you're like, I'm not going out there. Are you crazy? I mean, it's.
Well, as long as it isn't the open air, you must have air conditioning inside, mustn't you?
Oh yes, of course.
I know here, yeah.
Oh yes, of course. But Almagro doesn't have it, and of course the Roman Theatre doesn't have it.
Do open air theatre in summer.
It's so hot in Merida. You know those restaurants that have that kind of sort of spray thing that cools everybody down.
Yes,
in Merida,
yeah.
they have it in the streets. It's so hot.
I bet.
It's absolutely it's comically hot. I mean, you're talking about. I was doing the lighting, we were lighting from 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning, and it was the middle of the night, and it was still 35 degrees. I mean, it was extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
I went with a friend of mine, and her cousin was a member of the Greek National Theatre, and we went to Epidaurus, and it was August, and we went to a dress rehearsal. And basically, even though the sun was about to go down, we fried our bottoms. What can you do?
Yeah, it's a humanitarian issue. That's why they put the cushions. It's not.
Yes, but these cushions are awful because they are plastic.
Yeah,
They're
true.
plastic, and so you know what I mean. It's awful. the heat of the stones
And you need two of them.
and the plastic together. What?
We need two. You got to remember, I was sitting there. I watched the show.
Yeah.
You know, I
sitting
watched.
much more than
You know,
me.
but I
We're all trying to work in the world to have less plastic in the world anyway, so that's a good idea.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, let's finish for just now.
Okay.
Well, let's do this again soon. And it's been an absolute delight. And I always learn something when I speak to
Thank everybody.
Michael.
Been
Absolutely.
Very nice.
And,
All right.
And so we'll be back tomorrow when we're speaking to Angel Sala, where we'll be talking about genre films from the 1970s, just as a change of pace in Spanish. So you know where we'll be if you want to drop on by. And thank you very much to Michael. Thank you, Assumpta, for being
And
here.
you're gonna come here in Madrid, or we're gonna go to London soon.
Okay, lots of love.
Lots of
Bye-bye.
love.
Bye
Bye,
to
Michael.
everybody there, and we'll be back late tomorrow at 8 p.m. a
8
las
p.m.
8 de la tarde.
Yes.
And until then, it's going to be mañana.
And then we're gonna watch Scorsese tomorrow.
Oh yeah, we're going to go and see Scorsese.
He's in the Academy.
So we're going to go and hang out with. Well, we're not
Well,
going to hang
hang
out.
out,
We're
no.
going to go and watch.
See.
We're going to go and be there because Rodrigo Cortés, who we interviewed a year and a half ago, is going to be
Yes.
interviewing him.
Interviewing him live in the Academy.
So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go there, and we should watch his movie, no?
Perhaps.
Anyway, I'm sure it'll be wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
Killers of the Flower Moon. Or
Yes.
Moon or something.
Yeah.
Have you seen it? Is it any good?
But I've heard it's wonderful.
Okay, we have to watch it.
All right. So we'll go there and we'll say, "Hey, you, well done. You did it again, Marty." And on that note, thank you very much for being with us tonight. And mañana más y mejor.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye. Well, that happened. What a wonderful man.
Isn't he wonderful?
What a delight.
Isn't he wonderful?
He is a delight. We have to say hello to Butix, who's with us on Twitch right now. With
so it was
Walter White.
It was really very nice to have him around, and he helped me a lot in these 2 years.
No, it's
2
the other
years
thing
that we shot.
Yeah, the other thing, we didn't get a chance to say that because literally the shows he's done, the place he was back in the day. I mean, it is a who's who of British film and television. Whether it's Helen Mirren or Michael Gambon or Nigel Hawthorne, it just goes on and on and on. There was a particular thing that happened in theatre in the early 80s in the UK where it really exploded in a good way, where it became like a real sort of like measure of what theatre could be. And it was a very relevant thing, and the Royal Shakespeare Company at that point was just like the number one. There was nothing else more interesting or exciting to see. That was literally the perception that everybody had of it, was just how exciting everything was back in the day.
Look, Francisco's had an idea. He says, bring him back every week.
Every week. 1 second. Note to self. Well, if he's available. I mean, it's one of the things.
Beautiful.
Well, the other thing is, I always understand the people's reticence to either direct or teach, because, look, it's one of those things. It's a little bit like our politicians. One of the reasons they shouldn't be in power is because they want to be in power. And it's the same thing that you get with directing and teaching. Is a lot of the time is that it has to be something that, like it happens in Twelfth Night. Some are born great, some become great, and some have greatness thrust upon them. And it's very much the same thing when you're put into a position of responsibility to teach or direct or anything else like that.
True.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's a wonderful listener and a wonderful person.
Indeed. Right, we're going to finish tonight. Go eat something. It's been a heck of a day. I don't know about you, Assumpta.
Yes, I think we should eat something.
I've done, I don't know how many, 5 classes. I taught a wonderful script class. I had a great time with everybody. Ellie, who was here as well. We had a very, very thrilling class as far as I'm concerned. And we're going to be back tomorrow. Vamos a volver mañana a las 8.
A las viernes con Ángel Sala. Un abrazo muy grande y hasta mañana.